My name is Lori Peak, and I serve as the director of the Natural Hazard Center here at the University of Colorado Boulder. And I'm also the principal investigator for the National Science Foundation funded NHERI Converge facility. And I'm so pleased to share with you all that we've been running this webinar series for several years now, and this is actually our 25th webinar in the Converge series. So Ian, I don't know if that's is that our silver, our gold? I don't know which
I don't
precious
know.
metal this is, but this is our 25th webinar, and we are so pleased that you are here with us today to talk to us about the third edition of the NHERI Science Plan. And so for those of you who haven't checked out the science plan, the second edition, or now the hot off the presses, third edition, please know all of the NHERI science plans, they're published on Design Safe. They're free to download, easy to access. We'll make sure that we get the link to the science plan in the chat, and I know Ian has it on his slides. And this science plan has really played such an important role in guiding natural hazards researchers in all different domains, in terms of large-scale experimentation, computer modeling, social sciences, and novel engineering techniques that really share in common a goal to mitigate the harm, suffering, and damage caused by earthquake, wind, flood, fire, coastal, and other hazards. And so what we're going to hear today during this brief 30-minute webinar is Ian is here as the leader of the third edition of the science plan to provide an overview of the science plan, but also to engage in discussion specifically around the social science and the interdisciplinary progress that has been made in this edition. And just a brief, there are no words that can fully capture Ian's distinguished career and just what an incredible human he is. But for those of you who don't know Ian yet, I'm glad that you're now meeting him here online. He is the Arthur and L. Chu Distinguished Professor of Structural Engineering in the Department of Civil, Environmental, and Construction Engineering at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And Ian is a registered structural engineer in the state of Hawaii, and he's the past president of the Structural Engineers Association of Hawaii. He also serves as the associate director of the Structural Extreme Events Research Network, better known as STEER. And he is senior personnel in the NHERI Network Coordination Office. And again, he led this large and really distinguished multidisciplinary effort to bring together this science plan, which is really a monumental and a wonderful document that was created through much collaboration and hard work on the part of many people that Ian helped to bring together. And so the last thing I just want to say about him is he is a really amazing person who does such great work and is really committed to ensuring that his engineering practice is really applied for the benefit of society. And so, Ian, with that, it is a pleasure and an honor to welcome you to our 25th Converge webinar. On behalf of everybody out there, we're giving you a warm virtual round of applause, and I'm going to turn the mic over to you for as long as you need, and any remaining time we'll dedicate to Q&A. But for those out there, if you have questions, comments, please keep using that chat box or the Q&A box, and we'll keep track of that while Ian's speaking. So Ian, over to you, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Laurie, and thanks for that introduction. You quickly got me blushing. Yeah, so I am going to go through what the science plan offers you. I know the NHERI network is not familiar maybe to everybody, and so I thought I'd quickly go through what it consists of. NHERI, funded by NSF, consists of 12 different experimental facilities or facilities that aid in developing ways to mitigate the consequences of natural hazards and avoid them becoming societal disasters. The one you're involved with here is on the top left. I don't know if you see my cursor or if I should choose a pointer instead. Let me do that. Where's my pointer?
And Ian, we can see your cursor too, so
Oh,
whatever's
you
easiest
can.
for you.
Okay. I'm struggling to find the pointer now that that's a drawing tool. I don't want that. Sorry. Um, Let me just get rid of that. Here we go. All right. So this is Converge. There are many others. There's SimCenter at Berkeley, developing useful software tools. Design Safe that Laurie mentioned, storing all of the data and providing supercomputer facilities. Lehigh with a hybrid testing facility, 2 wind facilities down in Florida, large shake table for earthquake research at San Diego, a large centrifuge for geotechnical seismic, and also thumpers, machines that vibrate the ground for seismic investigations, tsunami, storm surge, wave flume in Oregon State University, and then finally the Rapid Center, which has equipment for doing post-event reconnaissance, and a new facility coming up the niche, which will look at large-scale wave and wind combined studies. So it's a dynamic engineering research center. The problem with that is the focus has in the past been on engineering. And so if I go to the first science plan, this was required by NSF in the contract over 8 years ago now, that the NCO prepare a science plan, 5-year science plan. And we did that with the help of the individual experimental facilities who developed their own science plans. And so this was published in 2017 as a living document. We never intended it to be static. And so once we got feedback on this original edition, the NCO organized an international workshop in 2019 to incorporate interdisciplinary teams and disruptive technologies into the science plan. And one of the big things that came out of that workshop was a series of 5 research campaigns as examples or models of what could be used or could be performed using NHERI facilities to advance our understanding of hazards and the consequences and how to mitigate them. That was published in 2020 and is what we had as a background. So when we came to NSF a few years ago and said, we think we need to update it again, they said, well, why? Well, we like that second edition. Well, the missing links were the following, or not all of them missing, but one big missing link. There was social science issues mentioned in that previous second edition, but not in the detail that I think we needed. Equity issues were really overlooked. Climate change wasn't even mentioned. Field reconnaissance, a lot of the ears, as you see down below here, the wheel of ears. Many of you might be members of SEER, Social Science Extreme Event Reconnaissance. If you're not, I'd suggest you sign up. It's always good to keep in touch with what's happening in the different areas. But there are also geotechnical, structural, near shore, hydraulic issues, operations and systems engineering, sustainable material and management, and more recently, public health, extreme event research, all tied together by this interdisciplinary science and engineering extreme event research center. So NSF has done a great job of now initiating or at least sponsoring a large amount of field reconnaissance. So we wanted that to be mentioned in more detail. The laboratory research has been going on for a long time, as have simulation tools, but the Sim Center that you see on the right has improved the tools that they're producing, and those are now available through Design Safe for people to use for all sorts of analysis, from social through engineering, through community response, through annualized loss estimates, everything. There's an enormous number of tools that we wanted to advertise. And finally, we wanted to encourage researchers to include practitioners in their projects. I want to go back to 2 fairly recent hazard events, and they both look very similarly devastating. The left one is Lahaina, very close to our heart here in Hawaii. 101 deaths, many people in their vehicles trying to escape this horrific fire. And on the right-hand side, bottom right, Fort Myers Beach, mobile homes and other on-grade homes washed away by a hurricane, unfortunately named Ian, resulting in 150 deaths. We, as an engineering research institute, know how to rebuild these areas. But that's not the solution, just rebuilding, even if they're tougher. There's an enormous societal effect of these events. I'm more familiar with what's happening in Lahaina, but the folk who live there want still to live there, and they don't want it to be some new, just cookie cutter development. They want it to feel like the old Lahaina, and that's a very difficult thing to achieve. And the human suffering that's ongoing for both of these locations and many others around the world is where you folk can help us in the engineering community, because we don't have that feel and we don't study those issues. So that's why I wanted to give this webinar. Excuse me. These are the members of the task group, and I've highlighted in red the number now that are social science oriented. Um, for the first two science plans, Laurie Peak was the only social scientist in the group of 16 to 20 people. So out of this group of 20 people, we now have 6 social scientists. So we were determined, and a good mix of other people with all expertise. We were very keen to get social sciences covered in detail in this science plan. So there's the QR code and the link, and these slides will be provided to Laurie, and you can distribute them. So we held another workshop. NSF agreed this is a good idea. Brought together a number of diverse people, developed another 7 new research campaigns, and finally published in October 23 what you see on the right-hand side. And we're obviously trying to disseminate this as widely as possible. So please take a look at it. The report itself is only 40 pages long and a fairly easy read, and then there's a lot of appendices. So I'm going to go briefly through some of it. But we've tried to incorporate in greater detail how it's not only the civil infrastructure we're looking at, it's the harm to people, the disruption of communities, the societal effects of these hazards, and how they can recover, not just by rebuilding, but by redeveloping their communities. Another key challenge is assessing the exposure, vulnerability, and adaptive capacity of both the civil infrastructure and the social systems that are threatened by these natural hazards, and including the issues of equitable, sustainable, and resilient reconstruction and resurrection of these communities. And it's going to be interesting to see how Fort Myers Beach and Lahaina manage over the next maybe decade before they can fully recover, and see how that works. We also add 6 key research questions which do similar things. Looking at collecting data after events. And it's not only the physical data, which, as you see in the bottom right, we at STEER have spent a lot of time tracking the performance of the structures, but it's the performance of the society, the evacuation, following orders, and then the survival during the reconstruction and how that society gets back together. That is something we haven't studied, but I believe SEER and others are doing that now, looking at the long-term studies on how communities recover and how to educate and encourage other communities to prepare for similar disasters in the future. How do we mitigate both the effects on structures, but also the effects on the community to increase our community resilience? What key physical, social, economic, and policy drivers affect the capacity for resistance, restoration, and renewal? I'm going through these briefly because we don't have a lot of time, but I want you to look at them in the full report. A lot of methodological innovations are needed to support this community resilience and how to rebuild the infrastructure and the societal systems after these hazard stresses. Understanding the behavior of civil infrastructure, the communities that use them, the households, all the way down to the individual level as they respond to disasters or prepare for them, and the response of communities to these loading actions. So we've tried to do a better job of incorporating holistically the social sciences in what is essentially an engineering. We're not trying to take over Laurie's job of running the Natural Hazard Center. Obviously, that was a concern by FEMA. And we said, no, we're asking them to help us be more socially conscious engineers. The 7 research campaigns I talked about, I'll simply go through the titles, but each of them also has a focus on, in the first one, low-income communities subjected to windstorms. In the second, it's preparing the Cascadia subduction zone for the big earthquake and tsunami that are going to happen sometime in the future. And and encouraging them to evacuate in time, plan for their evacuation. I wish we could say that buildings would be available for them to go up into, but they're going to have to get out of the tsunami zone. So education and social awareness. Cascading and compounding impacts affect connectivity, as you see in the picture on the right, between communities. That has societal effects. Large hurricanes, developing community-driven integrated research. And one of the things to stress is getting the community involved before you start developing solutions for them. We engineers love to come up with answers to questions. Ask my wife. All I can do is come up with a solution. I don't have a way of getting people to follow that solution. So getting the community involved so that they are part of developing the solution gives them more buy-in than just come in with, oh, I can solve this problem for you. The impacts of climate change which induce migration. These are one society having to leave their home territory and move into somebody else's area, and the effects that that can have on both communities. Net zero building materials, encouraging people to reuse after disasters. All of that waste it cannot just be put in a landfill. And then finally, education. Communication and education are crucial. So if you're interested in any of those, read through Appendix A. In Appendix B, we provide some keys to success for junior researchers, particularly. And here again, we try to include the aspects of incorporating a diverse research team, functionally as well as demographically. It's essential that all of those people be involved at the very first stages of developing your concept and your proposal. I've heard from a lot of social scientists that they get called at the last minute, a week before the proposal has to go in. Oh, we just realized we need a social scientist so that NSF will give it. They don't put it like that, but so that NSF will give us the money. No, too late. You folk, we'd like to get you involved as early as possible in developing the proposal. Sociologists, economists, urban planners, policy analysts. I'm grouping you all as social scientists. And we need your help to make sure that what we're doing is valid, is useful for society, is economically sound, can be put into practice, and then help us do that transfer at the end to the communities involved. Building a credible team. As I say, don't add people at the last minute thinking that's gonna persuade NSF. They see right through that. It's very hard to hide. If you're working with test beds in communities, involve representatives from those communities right at the beginning. And this, again, is where you as social scientists can help us. Engineers are notoriously introverted, and we don't reach out very often. We struggle sometimes. So having somebody who's more aware of community issues and anthropology, etc., would really be helpful. We look also to encouraging industry in implementation. So we're encouraging proposals to include a practitioner who is experienced at transferring the results into practice. And that doesn't have to be an engineering practitioner. It could also be a social scientist, an urban planner, putting these things into practice. And then finally, all of this should get into academic curricula. Again, both the engineering and the social science aspect of dealing with hazards. So if you're a young, new researcher and writing proposals, go ahead and look through Appendix B. There's more information there. Finally, Appendix C has descriptions of all of these facilities that I just talked about. So you can find ones that might be useful, or you might have an interest in working with folk in that area. We also have an appendix that covers each of the ears, as we call them. And so please join the ones that make sense for you, that are of interest. They're all now very active in their particular areas. So I want to end by just saying we're hoping this third edition of the Science Plan will serve as a roadmap for NHERI researchers and others, yourselves included, working on mitigating the effects of natural hazards on our communities. And at a NHERI summit last year, Susan Margulis, the Assistant Director of NSF Engineering Directorate, said that NHERI was very supportive of NHERI, and said that NHERI and other scientific networks are critical to move quickly at speed and scale to go from basic research, fundamental engineering research, to implementation by individuals, communities, and other agencies. So again, I've copied the science plan, and I'll stop there, and you can scan that and go into the science plan if you wish. But I would be happy to start addressing any questions or open up for discussion.
Ian, thank you so much for that overview. And that was fantastic. And to everyone who's out there, if you do have questions, again, please put them in the chat or the Q&A. And I have a question for you about those the seven case examples that are included in this edition, the 7 research campaigns and the 5 research campaigns that are in the prior edition. Can you tell us a little more, Ian, about what is the intent in terms of how does the author team hope those might be used? Are they meant to inspire that
Yep.
kind of integrative research? Are you hoping somebody's going to pick up those ideas and actually run with them? So tell us a little more about the integrative campaigns, please.
Yeah, sure. And I think that is two intents. One would be, it'd be lovely if a group of folk got together and picked up one of these and ran with it. We're you know, these were developed by folk at these workshops, the second and the third workshops. They're great ideas. Often people want to keep their great ideas to themselves because they want to run with them themselves, but people were prepared to share these ideas in the hopes that somebody else would pick them up and move forward. As you look through them, you'll also see that there are components of those that it may be possible to tackle individually. So if there's a component of one of these research campaigns that you see as your specialty, you could work on that component independent of the rest of the campaign. We're not trying to say they have to be done as a single entity. But yes, they're examples of what we would like to see people doing and using the NHERI facilities. All of these are geared towards using NHERI facilities to perform the experimental or the simulation analytical work. But yeah, take a look at them, and each of them probably about 2, maybe 3 pages long. And if it's something that you're interested in, try to get together a group of people and see how much of it you can tackle.
Very nice. Thank you. And worth noting that these incredible research campaigns, when Ian led that workshop, they really were collaboratively developed by the groups of multidisciplinary researchers who were there. So this wasn't just sort of one person sitting down and dreaming this up. So it was a really beautiful process. So thank you for that, Ian. I also see Carl has posed a question asking whether, Ian, could you please comment on whether it's worth considering replicating a model development such as Florida's Babcock Ranch?
I wondered if somebody would bring that up because we put that into the science plan. You might have noticed if you look at the science plan, I had to put it in. It is a perfect example, I think, of what communities could be doing. Now, it's likely that homes in Babcock Ranch are slightly above the local average on home price. Maybe that's something we as engineers and social scientists can work on figuring out. How do we bring that down? How do we make that kind of solution available to everybody? Because Babcock Ranch survived Hurricane Ian. They didn't have the highest wind speeds, but they have designed for the Florida wind speeds, which are some of the highest in the country. So there was very little wind damage, but that doesn't reflect totally because they didn't go through a full design level event. Nevertheless, on the flood side, they were one of the few communities that survived with virtually no flooding of residences or buildings. They designed their storm drain system to carry as much as it could, or as much as they could afford to design it for, and then they designed the streets to act as the excess flow. If you build your houses high enough above the crown of your roads can become the rivers that drain your community when the stormwater system gets flooded, as opposed to it flooding into your buildings. And not having basements, not having the things that we know cause problems in floods. Their electrical system is entirely self-owned, self-driven by solar panels. That survived intact. They had no outage of power. water system supply in the rest of the area was devastating. There were multiple hotels that had hospitals that had to shut down and move patients because they didn't have clean incoming water. No water supply. Babcock Ranch maintained their water supply throughout. Their power and all of their utilities are undergrounded. So they didn't lose power. They didn't lose power lines falling down on houses and crossing the roads. One of the big things in Lahaina was power lines on the roads was what forced the police to close the roads. And now you've trapped the people who are trying to escape. That's just not the answer. Oh man. So undergrounding power lines will be essential in Lahaina. There's no way they will rebuild without it. So yeah, Babcock Ranch is an excellent example, and we have a full page on Babcock Ranch in the science plan. And the trick is, how do we replicate that? How do we do that for everybody? So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Carl. I love that example.
Thank you, Carl. And Ian, we have another question that's come in from an attendee saying, if junior faculty are working on developing their career proposals on NHERI relevant concepts at the intersection of engineering and social science, what advice do you have for people who in department name fall on the engineering side, but they really do want to propose convincing work at this intersection? Are there ways to collaborate so the work can actually be done well on such an individual award, but that is integrative in the way you've described in the science plan? And thanks for the question.
Yeah, thanks for the question. That is a good point. Career awards are made to an individual, as you know, and they're an excellent foundation for your career. And I hazard to guess that Laurie had one back in the day. I don't know. I did not. I was not successful. And I think the reason I wasn't successful was because I was focusing on my narrow little research engineering idea. And I didn't think of whether it would be implemented. I didn't think of how that would work. And the review comments that came back, though encouraging, were saying it's unlikely that people are going to use this. And I hadn't thought of that. I thought, I got this great idea. Let's go with it. So I think, in fact, you're on the right track. I think if you're an engineer, you're applying for a career award. If you don't consider the social aspects of what you're doing, you're missing an opportunity, because I think that will strengthen your proposal. So I'm with you. Go right ahead. Maybe speak to folk in social science departments, or whatever social science area you're thinking of incorporating. Speak to some folk in that area. You can't include them in the proposal because it is an individual career award, but get their advice, and that will help you put together a more powerful proposal. Yeah, good.
And just uplifting what Ian said earlier too about reaching out to the PIs of the NHERI facilities, getting those letters of support to show that cross-cutting integration. There have been several special issues that have been published that get at this. And Ian, that in our last minute, there's one other question that was direct sent to me that I think relates to this wonderful career question. And the question is that the understanding that, are you supposed to now cite the NHERI science plan in an NSF proposal? Is that an expectation? Is that a plus point? Is NSF tracking this? So can you speak to whether there's an expectation around this now?
I don't think it's an expectation or a requirement at all, but it's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt at all. So yes, if you can find something in the science plan, in those grand challenges, the key research questions, if you can find something here that speaks to what you're trying to propose, absolutely reference it. Even quote the text, if you like, out of the grand challenge or out of the 6 research campaigns, and say based on the NHERI research. Because this shouldn't be seen only as NHERI. It is written as the NHERI science plan, but it really speaks to all of hazard research under NSF. So the fact that you might not be using a NHERI facility is not a problem. This science plan still works for you. So yeah, I would quote it, absolutely. But there's no requirement to do that. But I think it's a plus.
Nice. Ian, with that, we are at the end of our time. And so we just want to start and end with gratitude always. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this. It was a pleasure hearing from you. Thank you to all the participants who joined. And know, again, we will post Ian's slides and also the recording from this webinar, and with all gratitude to the National Science Foundation for the
Yep.
support that makes this webinar series possible and made this entire science planning process possible. So Ian, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Lori.
Thank you. See you soon.
Okay.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye, everyone. Have a good day.